Department of Economic Development.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good to see you. Thank you for having us.
Good to see you.
And of course, thanks to you and to all your colleagues for the support that you give the Department of Economic Development. We greatly appreciate it. If it's okay with you, Madam Chair, what I thought I'd do is highlight a few issues in our 16 budget. And
Okay.
of course, if you have questions about other things as well, happy to address.
All right,
but
good.
I'll point a few things out and we can go from there if that's agreeable to you.
That sounds good.
Excellent. If you under departmental administration, you will notice that there's increase in funds for one position. I wanted to point out that is for a Deputy Commissioner of International Relations. What we have seen at the department is obviously we have a much broader international reach. We have companies that are coming to Georgia. We have
You said the number where that is, so
I'd
we
be
can, if you don't mind, if you have that. I see it's 20.1.5, I think.
2215. And again, so we've got companies that are coming to Georgia. We have individuals. We have Georgia companies that are trying to do business overseas. What we want to do is to be able to put our best foot forward to coordinate and to communicate better, to work with our communities in Georgia to help prepare for international opportunities as they come. So that's that position. It will help coordinate with governor's trade missions, with the department trade missions, commissioner and sub-level as well, but it will truly will help us also work internally as well as with our external partners in the community and in each of Georgia's communities as well. We're excited about that. On film and video, just 2223 and 2224. Just wanted to point out that the film industry, of course, in Georgia is booming, gone from $250 million to $5.1 billion, and we've been working internally with just 4 people and an occasional intern. So we've got some additional marketing funds that will help us continue to grow. Some of our neighboring states have allowed their opportunities to decrease through credits and other things, and we're picking up a lot of shows. We're picking up a lot of crew. It's very good for Georgia. We'll be able to market, then we'll also be able to support the 4 individuals that are currently working under the direction of Lee Thomas, who's done an outstanding job for us.
Well, I would like to comment on that. I think it's amazing that you've done this with 4 people.
4 people.
I just, that's it's just amazing.
Well, they have done a great job, and so we appreciate the governor recognizing that and for your support as well on that particular position.
Do you mind if we stop and ask a question as you go along?
Absolutely.
Andy?
Yes, thank you.
Excuse me, Representative Welch.
Thank you. Question about post-production or post-production development in the state. We have
Right.
you're doing a lot of work on attracting the film business here to produce the initial. What about on post-production? The credits, I don't think the credits go to that effect, but what are we doing to recruit that secondary production after the filming is done, to cut it and splice it, put it together?
That's a great question, and there is a misperception. You actually do get the credit for post-production so long as it was filmed in Georgia.
Right.
External films, no, that hadn't been the case. The way we have seen it, Lee Thomas, I think, has done a great job working with companies. We see, we're interested in pre-production, the production itself, and post-production, which is why we've included it in the credit. One of the things that we've seen, though, is it is going to grow organically. Part of what we have now is we've got folks that live in New York or in California that come to Georgia to film. They've been here for 4 or 5, 6 months. They want to go home, and there's a lot of infrastructure that currently is in Los Angeles or in New York. That is going to come over time, as I understand it, and particularly as we develop further mature as an industry. We've got some post-production here already, and we're very, very supportive of it. We just think you got to be very, very careful on how you're drawing out some of the other industry when it is going to grow organically, and when we do have an opportunity right now with our tax credit. We're pleased with it.
Well, the Southern Crescent, the south side of Atlanta, is poised really well in terms of having Pinewood at one end of the crescent, and then some other 4 horsemen, I think, on the other side doing post-production. It's in close proximity to the airport.
That's right.
It's a really good window of transportation between those two and among those areas. for some post-production to be located. So just keep that in mind if you wouldn't mind.
And you're absolutely right. And we are actually working very closely with Pinewood. Just visited with them 3 weeks ago talking about this industry as well, or this opportunity. And so we're in close contact with them, and we agree. And we think that the Georgia Film Academy, as we're going down the line as well, you know, we've got so many great opportunities in the state across the board. One, we've got a great business environment. Two, we've got great locations and the commitment. And as we talk to the entertainment industry, we talk about our unwavering commitment to that industry. We're number 3 now, and we're going to continue to grow. But thank you. We certainly will keep that in mind. Turning to global commerce, 22.4. The one that I just wanted to point out there is we do have the number, let's see, 22.4.3 is increased funds for international trade office contracts, and then 22.4.4 funds for personal services representative. The second one is going to be in Macon, in the Macon area. We had kind of doubled that one up where we had an individual who was managing as well as working projects. We now want to just go straight projects on that. And so we're going to fill that slot in Macon. And because of you saw our trade numbers, we increased again 5%. We've got a lot more contacts, and we need to be able to support our 12 offices around the world, and that will help us do just that. And also, excuse me, and 5 as well, 2 positions to support international trade research and marketing. Again, an opportunity for us to work more trade show. We're doing a lot more in-house marketing-wise. It's going to allow us to continue to grow as we've got the divisions. Global commerce continues to grow, trade, and that sort of thing. So it's going to allow us to work more missions and more shows and to put Georgia's best foot forward in a very professional way there. And then I wanted to point out tourism is the other big issue that I wanted to point out. 22.8.3. Yes,
Representative Welch has a question.
Sure.
On 22.6, innovation and technology, we're eliminating, the governor's budget is proposing the elimination of the tobacco settlement funds for distinguished cancer clinicians and scientists, the DCCS, and then also to eliminate the tobacco settlement funds.
That's right.
There. Could you just explain a little bit why that's necessary?
And that is an ongoing scheduled payment. I'm going to ask John Moffitt if he'd step up and speak a little more.
So on the Cancer Coalition, that was a build-up, and over the 5-year period, and now it's ramping down. So I believe, and we have Susan Schaus here who could speak on it, but I believe in 2017 there'll be no clinicians working anymore. So that's where this is ramping down now, that money on that.
I have a question on that, too. Many of us had an opportunity to go out and visit Emory University and saw the good things that biotech companies that they were developing, and they had so many compliments on the funding that they'd gotten through the Georgia Research Alliance and how many biotech companies were coming to Georgia. Can you explain to us about the number of biotech companies that are coming to Georgia through the Georgia Research Alliance?
And I may defer also to the Research Alliance on some of the specifics, but let me say that there is a concerted effort in the life sciences industry from the department as well as what the GRA is doing in partnership with Emory. On our end, with the Baxter announcement, we put marketing money towards doing a study to make sure that we're maximizing those opportunities. As Baxter comes online, we're going to see more and more. We focused on bio and some of the trade shows as well. But you want to speak more specifically to the bio, as far as the specific companies, you may be better off than I can to speak on that.
Madam Chairman, the Commissioner is right. The Department is doing a great job recruiting companies in the biotech area. What the Georgia Research Alliance is doing is helping recruit scientific talent and putting equipment in place that will help our faculty make discoveries, and in turn we do have about 50 or 60 biotech companies that are in the very early stages of development, but they're all built around university technologies that are coming out of the universities.
I don't know if you've had a chance to visit what they're doing at Emory, but it is really amazing, some of the things that are coming out of there. And I know biotech companies don't really have that many jobs, but they're good jobs and good paying jobs. And I think, from what I understand around Georgia Tech, I'm not sure that a lot of them are moving in out there. There was one man that came participated in the conference, but for some reason, he got some money from the Georgia Research Alliance and developed a company and sold it. And I think he went to New Jersey or something. I can't remember what or why it went to New Jersey. But we need to, when they use our money and develop them here, we need to get them to stay here.
Absolutely.
But
So we're,
but I wonder too about the tobacco settlement money has been close to me, and because it was in my area that we lost the tobacco allotment that in turn gave us tobacco settlement money, and part of the tobacco settlement money was to be used to reduce smoking and all of that. Are we still doing that?
Some of that, Madam Chairman, is going on with Georgia Core, Nancy Paris's organization, and then Community Health.
Where is Georgia Core located now?
They're in the Hurt Building physically,
No,
but their budget is in Department of Community Health, I believe.
Is that a standalone agency, or I mean, it's just Did it used to be under? Didn't it used to be under y'all at one time?
It did, and it spun out on its own 2 years ago.
And it's public health.
Yes,
And how much? You don't know how much funds they get.
I do not.
Check on that and let's see what happened to that money. Thank you.
Madam Chair, one further question.
Okay.
The on line 22.6.7, it's telling us there was a reduction of about $5.3 million due to a contract with a public service special funding initiatives program. Could you just explain why that's a reduction in that amount of money in terms of? This is kind of following up on what the Chairwoman was saying.
Well, as far as we know, this is all getting transferred over to the Board of Regents,
That's just
this money.
Okay.
And so it's just a transfer from one department to the other.
Well, it sort of makes sense since it's research and a lot of
Exactly.
Georgia Tech and all the research is under that, and I understand that. But I was just checking on the tobacco settlement money and making sure it was used for the way it was.
And Madam Chair, to your point, there is great opportunity in the life sciences. And again, that's one of our focuses right now, and with Georgia Tech, Morehouse School of Medicine, with Emory, and what's going on at the University of Georgia. There's a lot of great things that are going on, and the partnerships really do matter and are very helpful to us.
And having the CDC right here in
CDC,
Atlanta makes a
Absolutely. We got a great ecosystem for life sciences as well. And then I'll turn to tourism, 22.8, just 22.8.3, point 4, 22.8, 22.8.3, and point 5 are the two that I wanted to point out. Is transferring increased funds for a marketing project manager position in social media, as well as increase in funds for our marketing efforts. This is the first increase in marketing funds for tourism since 2008. We appreciate the importance that the governor and his staff and folks have seen. Tourism is a $53 billion a year industry in Georgia. It supports 410,000 jobs, and we know the economy was rough and things had to be done, and we appreciate very much that we've seen the increase and the increased focus on tourism, because it's an important part of what we do. And so the slot that we've got will help us manage the marketing projects, it'll be a marketing position. And in social media, I just wanted to point out, we're on 13 different platforms, and as the world has changed, more people go online to plan their trips and that sort of thing. And we are a top 10, just last month, we were named a top 10 site and a top 10 travel destination on social media in December, on the list with Disney and Tourism Australia. So what we've done, again, a small group, really helping to put Georgia on the map. We've done a lot, but we feel that we're very, very pleased and can do more with this increase. In addition, our competitors are really our neighboring states around us, and they've heavily invested as well, so this increase really will go a long way, and we're very appreciative.
Oh, I have a question. 22.8.5, is that any tobacco settlement money that you're transferring to tourism?
Not that I'm aware of. No, ma'am, it's not.
I mean, The way it's worded in the innovation and technology, it says that they took a cut in $750,000 from that and they put it to our tourism, but that wasn't a request that we made. But the wording on 22.6.5, it shows that there is a transfer of funds in there of $750,000, and we did get additional $750,000 in our tourism bucket, but it's not a request that we made for that to be a cut come out of the GRA funding.
So you don't know where the money came from?
Well,
Was it
according
came-
to this, it looks like they reduced GRA funding and put it
Yeah,
in
so
our
you don't
tourism.
know if
but
it was
that-
tobacco settlement money?
No, that would be Cancer Coalition money, that's to tobacco. GRA is not the tobacco money.
Okay.
GRA money is state-funded, and then the Cancer Coalition money was funded through the
The
tobacco settlement.
Okay. How do you plan to spend the $750,000? That's a lot of money.
It's a good chunk, and we appreciate it. We have not been on broadcast television except for a little bit on GPB. So what we plan to do for the first time is to be on television slots in targeted drive markets during the spring travel season, which will be about $450,000. Our research shows that the markets, which are between 3 and 4 hours away from Atlanta, have the most potential. So we plan on targeting that as well. And then additional online funds of about $300,000 to provide an opportunity for online media buys. Again, we're seeing the trend is online, so we want to be able to beef that up. So we're going to increase our exposure in both the spring and the fall, and put our website, exploregeorgia.org, more attention to it by focusing on a full funnel media solution that will drive awareness, consideration, and response to our target demographics. So we're going to, the big thing, though, has always been broadcast, as I understand it. And again, that was the first thing that went, and now we're going to have an opportunity from a regional perspective. And we do have our plan is start it in Georgia, work regionally, work nationally, work internationally. But with our funds being what they have, it's been really limited beyond even the state. So now we're going to be able to work regionally, which is a good plan, and it should be very, very successful. But those are the two main areas that we're going to focus on: are broadcast and online.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey,
I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, so does that mean if we get this extra money for the media or the TV, that means we could try to catch up with Alabama? Because I can't even turn the TV on sometimes without seeing this Robert Trent Jones golf trail, and I've even thought about going over there a couple of times. But I think that's a good thing. We talked about that recently, I think.
But to defend the Department of Economic Development, I think that Robert, correct me if I'm wrong, that golf course trail is owned, isn't it financed through the Alabama Teacher Retirement Association?
Oh, it is?
I understand that it. I understand that it is.
So that's what you would call alternative investments.
And so, I think if we tried to take our teacher retirement, they would probably run us
Yeah,
off.
maybe so. Yeah.
But Representative Shaw, you make a great point. You'll see Alabama, you'll see Tennessee, you'll see South Carolina. This will allow us an opportunity to compete, and we've done more. We've had more bang for the buck, and we should be very, very proud of the marketing team, the tourism team that we have. But this is going to give us an ability to do a lot more, and we encourage everybody to go to exploregeorgia.org. Stay home. We got some great golf courses too.
Yep, I agree. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Thanks to the committee.
Are there any other questions? Do y'all have any other questions of the commissioner? Thank you so much, and appreciate the job you're doing. Okay, who's next? Soil and water. And Commissioner, if you'll come to that, that'll
Yes,
be
ma'am.
great.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Brent Dykes, Executive Director of the Georgia Soil and Water Commission. I'll call your attention to the tracking sheet on my page. It's page 85, section 43 for the FY16 Governor's recommendation for the agency. Just a couple of things to bring the committee's attention. I handed out a brochure that's green in color that I think has been passed around that I'll call your attention to for program activities, and I appreciate you passing those around. Just a brief update on the Soil and Water Commission for any new committee members. Soil and Water Commission is an agency of state government that supports Georgia's 40 conservation districts, made up of 370 locally elected and appointed officials, a minimum of 2 per county across the state, and we believe that these local district supervisors are best situated to help our private landowners within an urban or an agricultural setting address the state's natural resource concerns through a voluntary cooperative process, and certainly support the state's #1 industry, agriculture, which is the #1 industry here in this state. In FY15, the commission currently has 38 employees in the agency.
Okay, I've got a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, how many, there are 51 positions, isn't that right, in soil and water?
51 budgeted positions. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, of the 51 of those budgeted commissions, how many are currently filled?
38 of the 51 are filled.
38 are filled.
Yes, ma'am.
Of those vacancies that have funds attached to them, have you requested funds to get them filled, or why aren't they filled?
There are 2 vacant positions that have funding attached to them.
2 vacant positions
Yes,
that have
ma'am.
funding. Okay. So the agency has a lot of unfunded
Yes, ma'am.
vacancies.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Have you requested over the years to have these vacancies filled?
No, ma'am, because we've been in a negative budget for the last 7 years.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
We haven't had, in the governor's recommendation, certainly we've had communications with OPB, but in the
But
7 years of down budget, we have not.
But during that, you never requested for them to be filled?
We had discussions with OPB, but never made it to the governor's
To-
recommendation. No, ma'am.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Did it make to your recommendations that you sent to the governor?
In general discussions, yes, ma'am.
No, on paper.
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay. Currently, the commission has $2.6 million in state funding, a little over $380,000 in federal funds, and $1.3 million in other funds, for a total budget of $4.47. That's reflected there on the tracking sheet. A couple things related to the agency. Certainly, we work with farmers all across the state on cost share programs, reading the state's agricultural water meters and maintaining 13,000 of those across the state.
Of those 13,000, let me ask you a question on the water meters.
Yes.
Do y'all read those all?
No, ma'am. We contract with the Georgia Forestry Commission to read 3/4 of them every year, and we read and maintain 1/4 every year.
Okay, so it's done through the Georgia.
Yes, ma'am. We contract with Georgia Forestry on a
Okay.
per-site basis.
All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. We also administer the state's erosion control training program.
Have you got a question?
No, go ahead. I'll follow up at the end.
Okay. We administer the state's soil and water erosion and sediment control training program. In this past year, certified or recertified over 8,000 individuals through the certification program. In coordination with the U.S. Department of Agriculture and Natural Resource Conservation Service, we've conducted over 3,000 reviews of erosion control plans across the state to meet their compliance, ensure their compliance with the Erosion and Sediment Act of the state. NRCS plan reviews account for about 50% of those, so over 1,500. And those represent a large cost savings to the state, because currently those reviews are done at no charge to the state because of the Soil and Water District's relationship with USDA and NRCS.
Can I interrupt you a
Yes,
minute?
ma'am.
Because I think we've got some questions along.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't really even know. I was reading a report from at South Georgia Soil and Water that
Yes,
they
ma'am.
asked for an audit down there on some things.
The Flint River Soil and Water District is going through some financial reviews. Yes, ma'am.
Could you please let us know about that?
Yes, ma'am. I can tell you what I know about it.
Does
There's
that
a-
come under you?
The soil and water districts do, yes, ma'am. Each local soil and water district, all 40 of them, the Flint being one of them, are sovereign bodies. They make their own decisions. We have staff that assist them and provide input, and certainly they're represented by the Department of Law on legal matters, and administratively, we provide them guidance
So
also.
our Attorney General's office is involved?
Yes, ma'am. They've been reached out to. Yes, ma'am.
Could you, how much can you tell us it's going
Not very much in a public setting. I'd be glad to have a private conversation because there are some matters that are going on that I wouldn't feel comfortable discussing in public.
All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair, well, when you're talking about the soil erosion manual, that's typically referred to as the blue book, is that right? Or is that the?
Green book.
Green book, sorry.
Yes, sir.
Green book. So the green book, who prepares that document?
Currently, the Soil and Water Commission Board and the staff that I manage are in charge of publishing, editing, and reviewing that document.
Who is that outsourced to get, from the original green book copy, where was that
It's been around since 1975, which preceded certainly my service at the Soil and Water Commission. Early on, it was a combination of agricultural practices, standard practices that were then being used in an urban setting, and it's changed through future editions since then.
And then when the commission makes amendments to the Green Book, are those amendments made in terms of based upon scientific studies that are done, or are there
Yes, sir.
some other best
That's
practices?
our intent. Yes, sir.
Okay. And so who conducts those studies? How are those determined that's going to get the
Yes, sir.
review so that there can be some level of scientific certainty that the products or the recommendations that are being made in the Blue Book tie to some scientific valid
Yes, sir.
study?
In the current review that we went through, which was 10 years in the making, the 5th edition was in effect for the past 10 years. We moved towards a 6th edition in the last 18 months. That review was conducted, the Soil and Water Commission Board that I work for, appointed by the governor, formed a technical advisory committee of industry, government, and other folks that are involved in erosion, sediment control, home builders, things of that nature. Convened that group. They went through a 3-year process working with a lab that we went through a private bid to select, to do some testing, and then based on those findings, that committee made recommendations to the Soil and Water Commission Board, which then adopted those recommendations.
Well, the reason why I ask is because, when scientific studies are something that, when they're done, they're not done by just one scientist or one scientific group. That's peer review, and that's
Yes.
what elevates something from just a hypothesis to an actual theory, is that it gets tested by peer review. So I'm a little concerned if you just have one consultant that you're hiring to do these tests, if it's not peer reviewed or it's not reviewed in some other way by other scientists to reenact the testing that's been done to confirm those results, then it seems like there's an inherent bias to get it one way or the other, and I'm just curious as to what was done to peer review those studies.
We went through a public comment where we made the results known to the public. We received multiple public comments over the last year, certainly in that.
And you said the studies that were done was over a 3-year period?
Yes, sir.
And how long is your public review process?
It was at least 90 days, if not longer. Well, it's been actually over the past, since last February, too.
90 days to conduct peer review of a 3-year process.
Yes, sir. The testing didn't take the 3 years. The grant that we had that funded it was a 3-year grant. The predominant testing was 18 months.
18 months of testing.
Yes, sir.
And then peer review, 90 days to peer review.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Also, the Soil and Water Commission is very active in erosion control, not only erosion control, but watershed dams, and certainly the Commission is currently managing over $10 million in bond funding, which we're very appreciative to the committee for them supporting in 6 watershed dam projects across the state. Currently, also, soil and water districts continue to work in the Federal Farm Bill program, which has provided over $103 million to the state.
We've got a question. Representative Shaw.
Mr. Dykes.
Yes, sir.
Tell me, going back to Representative Welch's question, going back to the Green Book, so when y'all go through and you just make changes to that, I mean, this last round of tests on the silt fences and so forth that I'm familiar with.
Yes, sir.
What causes y'all to go and have to review that and make changes to your guidelines and do all these tests? Was there a problem with
Several things were coming before the Commission Board at that time. Over the last 10 years, which is the 5th edition, was in effect for 10 years, we had multiple vendors trying to come to the Commission to enter and become a product recognized by the Green Book. We did not have a process to allow new products, whatever they may be, into the Green Book. So that was the biggest push as far as moving towards the 6th edition. Also, other changes in the 6th edition were brought about by the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit, NPDES permit, and things that were changing federally that were being adopted, certainly in the state permit that needed to be changed in the manual also.
What about a lot of those products are used for transportation projects, construction projects? Probably the majority.
A lot of them, yes, sir.
So doesn't GDOT, do they have their own set of guidelines on that?
GDOT was a member of the technical committee, both technical committees that we've had. Up until the 6th edition, the Soil and Water Conservation Commission chose to recognize the DOT qualified products list for a list of products. What was happening, though, is a lot of folks were coming to us saying we can't get on a list. Our response was, we'll go to DOT. If you get on their list, we're recognizing their list. If a product didn't meet a DOT use for a linear project, but might be used on a home site, DOT was under no responsibility to have to test that product. So we had vendors not being able to get into the erosion industry if they weren't necessarily a product that could be used on a linear project.
So there's two different sets of guidelines out there.
No, sir. The DOT has to follow the manual for erosion control currently under state law, and we just so happen to recognize their qualified products list up until the 6th edition as the approved products list.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Another question. How long have you been with Soil and Water Commission?
Since July of '96.
And you've been the director that long?
No, sir. No, sir. Only the last 7 years as
Okay.
director.
Now, as far as the transfer of the funds for your department going to agriculture that's recommended by the governor here, do you think that there would be any redundancies in staffing, and once that move is complete, I guess, I would think that there'd be some replication of services, particularly in administration and management. Do you think there would be?
That could occur. I've not had communications with the commissioner this session. We talked about that last session.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Are there any other questions? But right now, you might want to tell people that the 5th edition and the 6th edition of both.
Yes, ma'am.
And-
5th edition are both in effect at the current moment. The plan preparers by state code are the ones that draw their engineering plans for DOT projects or subdivision and other projects. Can choose whichever edition they feel is best suited for their condition. Yes, ma'am.
Explain to me one other question I have. I
Yes, ma'am.
can't find a lot of water meters. Have you heard anything about a lot of water meters that we can't find? What is this? I keep hearing about water meters.
There are some water meters that when we go out to read are not in the location that they should be located in. A lot of irrigation systems have been updated in the last couple of years due to commodity prices and farmers reinvesting in their irrigation systems. Some irrigation systems have been moved from one site to another and the meter went with it. So we're in the process of tracking all of those down. There are meters that are not there when we go to read or our contractors go to read also.
How many meters are missing?
Missing could be the wrong terminology used.
Well, how
not in the
many you
correct
can't find
location.
then? How
Yes,
many
ma'am.
can't you find?
Approximately 700.
700.
Yes, ma'am.
Out of how many? How many meters?
13,000.
And
Any other questions?
you, Representative, I want to follow up
Representative.
with Representative Shaw's question. Hey, Madam Chair, you said that there could be some replication in terms of administrative authority. What would be that replication?
Possibly my position. Just to be honest.
That's what we want, honestly.
Yes, sir. I'm going to give you an honest answer.
Anything else?
Without having a detailed conversation with the Department of Ag, I would not want to, get in any details. But certainly, if agencies are moved around and placed under other agencies, certainly there could occur some redundancy. I don't think that currently at Soil and Water we're heavy on administration because we've reduced the administrative program by 2 positions over the last 5 years. Our human resource person also does contracting. Our purchasing person also does property management, and our budget officer does more than just handle budget. So I think from an administration standpoint, we've downsized a tremendous amount, but certainly we'd be willing to work with the committee on those issues.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for
Yes, ma'am.
coming.
You're welcome.
Forestry.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman and
Thank you,
committee.
Commissioner Ferris.
Appreciate the opportunity to be here to review our recommended FY16 budget for the Georgia Forestry Commission. Our budget is on page 44, section 25. We'll begin with the administration budget line, 25.1, and 25.1 through 25.3, or 13, are all statewide common budget changes reflecting budget changes in the employee retirement system, employee recruitment and retention, and with the Department of Administrative Services insurance programs. I should note to the committee that our administration program did go through a zero-based budget review with the governor's office this year, and the findings included several commendations for a couple of new programs the GFC has initiated. One of those being the internet-based system that we call CARES. It's a close calls, accident and injury and illness reporting system. And this is a system for our GFC employees to share information about injuries and close calls on the internet so we can all see it across the state. And we were asked by OPB to share this internally developed system so that other agencies could use it, and we have done so. In addition to our number one goal of the safety of our firefighters and employees, this program links closely to the workers' compensation claims, which is also of great concern to us given our tremendous turnover rates. Due largely to resignations, 1/3 of our employees now have less than 5 years of experience. And this group of inexperienced professionals is disproportionately accounting for nearly 50% of our workers' comp claims. Of even greater concern, it takes 2 years to train and gain the experience for a wildland firefighter to be able to fight wildland fire. In our most fire-prone area of South Georgia, due to resignations again, an alarming 38% of our firefighters have less than 2 years of experience, and they cannot safely and effectively respond and fight wildfires. Which means when they go in high fire danger situations, we have to send direct supervision with that individual, whether that be another ranger and tractor or the chief ranger.
Mr. Commissioner, how many
Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
trained firefighters do you have? What's your total number?
What we've done is cross-trained virtually all of our employees, our foresters, even my administrative assistants, and our communications director is trained and certified in firefighting. That number is well over 400. I can get you the exact number. I can tell you we have 330 crawler tractors, about 150 fire engines, Type 6 and Type 7 fire engines, but we'll get you the exact number of trained, certified firefighters across all positions. To give you some perspective on the impact, about 38% of our firefighters having less than 2 years of experience. That figure in 2010 was 6%. So we've gone from 6% inexperienced firefighters to 38%. And this CARE system is one of our efforts to protect and provide for the safety of our GFC professionals. The OPB Zero-Based Budget Review also commended the development of our federal firefighters program. Through this program, we screen and procure military surplus firefighting equipment for your rural fire departments and also for the GFC use. A few examples of this equipment include truck tractors, bulldozers, fire engines, heat sensing equipment, a wide variety of things. This program is now 2 years old, and the Forestry Commission has procured over $32 million worth of fire equipment for y'all's fire services out there. Additionally, GFC has procured 11 truck tractors and tankers that we've outfitted and plumbed, not only for use on fires, but also to be used in extreme winter weather conditions. We've got them set up so that they can spray brine on the roads during those situations to keep our highways from freezing. So that program has proved invaluable to the state. And that's a good segue to our next budget line item, line 2515. We've been asked to redirect funds to implement winter weather task force recommendations to improve fleet management through smartphone real tracking of our equipment during the deployment to winter weather emergencies. Last year, the GFC sent 250 of our professionals along with equipment tractors, dozers, four-wheel drive trucks to assist during the winter weather emergencies. We have pre-designated task force where we can take the pumps and engines out of the back of our four-wheel drive fire engines and fill those with sand and salt. So this system would help track that equipment during those type emergencies. But we're also working with GEMA to determine the most cost-effective and efficient technology that will not only function with GEMA's GoDog system for tracking, but also enable us to better track our equipment in firefighting situations and to be able to dispatch the closest resource during fire dispatches.
Was that GoDog system developed by Georgia Tech?
I cannot tell you for certain who
I'm sorry.
developed that, but it's a pretty safe bet not. Moving down to forest management, and the same with the forest protection budget line items, section 25.2 and 25.3. As with the administration budget line items, each of these reflects statewide common budget changes. Moving down to section 25.4. That's our tree seedling nursery, and I'd like to note that no state funds are appropriated to operate our tree nursery program. It is self-funded through seedling sales receipts. But most importantly, the receipts from those seedlings fund our tree improvement and seed orchard program. Progeny testing through North Carolina State Tree Improvement Co-op have designated 3 of our families in the Arrowhead Orchard as the 3 most productive coastal loblolly pines. Those families are showing 54% gain in production, which is huge. Our work through genetics and through our orchards is literally adding hundreds of millions of dollars of value to Georgia's landowners, industry, and the state. Lastly, I'd like to direct you to page 101 under section 50.2.3, bond items 90 and 91. I'd like to note a request to change those bond requests, which we have reviewed.
What page is that, 101?
101, the very last page, at the top of the page.
A lot of us didn't bring the book, so we'll just have to look at the bond request.
I got it here.
But
Okay, I can kind of give you a highlight
just give us
overview.
a
Those
highlight.
are 2 bonds there, $4 million to replace firefighting equipment. We now have a $17.9 million deficit in replacing old firefighting equipment. So that $4 million in the governor's recommendation is critical to our operations. And Bond 91 provides $460,000 for repair projects on our 110 offices located across the state with over 800 buildings. And I should start by saying that a few months ago we closed 3 more GFC fire control units in Greene County, Hancock County, and Putnam County, and moved them all into a single facility at the Shoulder Bone property purchased by the DNR. And this year we'll also be closing the district office and relocating them to this same facility. That makes 26 fire control offices that we've closed since the start of the recession. The one that we're requesting your assistance on is the closure of Chatham County office. And it's been combined with the Bryan unit. And we've worked since that time to get land donated in a better location along the Bryan-Chatham County line and on a site that better enables acceptable response time to wildfires. On our own, we've already prepared the site with clearing, grading, and other work, and we need $302,000 to complete construction of that Bryan-Chatham unit. And to stay within the legislative intent of the bond appropriations, we're requesting that you redirect $302,000 to cover construction of this office. The OPB has advised that this would best be accomplished by adding a third bond item to the bond request. That concludes my presentation, other than to say thank you for the help and support of this committee. The assistance you provided last year with our pay parity issues and with adding $6.1 million to our equipment bonds has been a great help.
We've got lots of questions. Okay. Representative Number.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, if I may, I have several questions. I know
Go
you just
ahead.
referenced that you've got a lot of people lit up here.
No, not a lot. We just got 2 or 3.
Just, and I think I know the answers to a lot of these. I just, as a point of clarification, that everybody understands it the way I do. When you say you've got 38% of your wildland firefighters with less than 2 years' experience, that is a critical number for everybody to have in their minds of how dangerous that is. And when I hear you say, since the turn of the recession, 26 fire control offices in the state of Georgia have been closed. How many timbered acres do we have, Director, in Georgia?
Over 24.7 million acres.
Over 20. Everybody in here, I want y'all to just do a little brainstorm and let all this soak in. 24 million acres of timber, the leading state in the nation for timber growth. And we're closing 26 fire control offices. We've got 38% of our men and women out there on the line with less than 2 years' experience. He was a lean agency prior to the recession that had no trimming up to do but to get into the bone. And we're asking these men and women to go out there as Georgia's growing up now, around 10 million citizens, to close the offices and really hurt the morale of the men and women that protect our subdivisions and our businesses and an industry in Georgia that's nearly $30 billion annual revenue. Tell me how the morale is in your agency right now.
Well, we are having real retention problems, primarily due to pay parity issues and concerns.
That means not good. Morale's not good. I mean, I want you to be blunt, Director. You're very nice. I tell him all the time he's too much of a gentleman. I mean, it's not good, is it?
Obviously, when you're experiencing the kind of resignations that we are across the board and across the state, it is an issue and a challenge. We do exit interviews and have been doing those for a long time. And universally, those exit interviews are indicating that our folks love the job, they love the work, they love who they're working with, love what they're doing, they love providing that public service, but they can't afford to feed their children and pay rent. Our entry-level ranger position for a family of 4 qualifies for peach care and food stamps. And so we just simply can't compete with private industry or county government or federal governments with those salaries.
Tell me, Director, if I may, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Director, when you hire somebody, and obviously we're having to hire them as fast as you can in this agency, how much money does the state spend training somebody?
We've gone back and looked at our hiring and training costs, and again, it takes 2 years to get a new hire trained and experienced where he can respond on his own. But our total costs are $39,000 to advertise, hire, and train a new ranger.
$39,000 to hire them and train them.
Yes, sir.
And 38% of them have less than 2 years, so we're turning that number over pretty fast.
Well, that works out to nearly $4 million in hiring and training cost for our current existing vacancies.
Okay. Can you explain to the committee that may not know and to the members and remind me about WUI, if I'm saying it right, Woodland Urban Interface?
Wildland Urban Interface.
Wildland Urban Interface.
That is one of the largest threats and concerns to our citizens in the state. Wildland Urban Interface is basically where construction, homes, subdivisions interface with the wildlands. So our fire control efforts, the danger to our firefighters has increased dramatically as this WUI increases. Rather than just protecting forest and protecting trees from wildfires, we're put in a position of protecting homes and lives from wildfires.
So it'd be fair to say that a lot of people who may not consider themselves in rural Georgia can be impacted in a heavy way by fire in Georgia.
Most certainly, I think one of the best examples of that was in 2007 and 2011. The wildfires we had down in southeast Georgia in the Waycross area, and this was not made public at the time, but we had great concerns and had laid out plans to evacuate Waycross because the fires were surrounding and triangulating on Waycross. And another day of extreme fire weather with the winds we were having, we would have had to evacuate the entire town. We did evacuate many towns and cities in the surrounding area.
So it would be fair to say that what this committee did under Chairman Houston's leadership last year and the will of the General Assembly was to try to put extra funds toward your pay parity efforts inside the department. And while I know you mentioned that was a big help, but we're not where you need to be. Is that correct?
Last year, we presented a plan that was reviewed by and developed with a private contractor, a consulting firm, reviewed by the House Budget Office, and also reviewed by the Human Resources Administration for consistency with the direction the state was heading. And that plan recommended $4.2 million to get our employees up to 85% of market rates.
85%.
Yes, sir. And y'all were able to appropriate $1.8 million last year of that request at 4.2.
And the 4.2, I want to make sure I understood you right. The $4.2 million ask was to get you to 85%.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That was the figure and the percentage that I think it's pretty universal amongst the consultants in the industry that you've got to be at least at that 85% of market level, or you're not going to be able to retain employees.
So we're doing a great job, Madam Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
The golf courses that my good friend from South Georgia referenced earlier in tourism and economic development literally could be at risk as Georgia grows, subdivisions build. These are all positives for the state of Georgia. We're preserving and continue to do good environmental policy up here at the General Assembly to make sure that the state of Georgia continues to be a great timber growing state. In the meanwhile, you're shutting down 26 offices and 3 more to be closed, and some span of control efforts still in the making, and
Yes,
losing
sir.
employees every day and can't retain them. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So it'd be fair to say that this committee, under your charge, needs to do everything we can to try to get you some money to help your pay parity issues, right? To help morale?
Yes, sir, as can be done, and I do not see the big picture of state needs and critical needs across the state. I only see and know and am familiar with the Forestry Commission critical needs.
Well, I commend you and your agency and every man and woman that employ in it for what you do for the state of Georgia. And you got our effort in trying to help you lower that turnover rate and increase your pay parity. I think we recognize that one of the reasons our film industry grows and our tourism grows here is because of the beauty in Georgia, and that's not from a bunch of charred trees and burned over brush. That's from a green, flourishing state that y'all are protecting. And I commend you for your efforts and your leadership in tough economic times when you already didn't seem to have a whole lot of money to deal with. So we're going to try our best to help you on that.
Thank you. I appreciate the comments, and I will certainly pass those on to our folks out there in the field.
Yes, sir.
And there's one other thing I'd like to say. Before these cuts came, you had no really fluff in your budget. So when you had to take across-the-board cuts, you just really, like Chad said, you had to cut down to the bone because there was no fluffs. And I appreciate the innovative things y'all have done to make it go.
I appreciate that, and I know I've got a biased opinion, but I think we're extremely effective and efficient agency, and give the Georgia state taxpayers the biggest bang for their buck.
Thank you. Do I have any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Agriculture.
Can we go ahead and mash our button now?
I feel like go ahead and say me too. We went to sleep here, y'all. Hang on just a second. Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank y'all for the opportunity to be with you today. We start on 16, and as far as any changes in our budget, I think it's bond 83 and 84 on 50.2.3.83 and 84 and deals with the markets. And I'll kind of, Madam Chair, if it's okay, get to those in just a moment.
Okay.
I would like to start our kind of in a triangle approach to our presentation today, the little three-sided, which was similar to what we told you on the 15 budget. We focused when we turned fulfilled our responsibility to communicate with OPB back in September. It was really a three-phase approach. First about our people, and then our vehicles, and lastly our markets. And if it is okay with the chair, I'd love to kind of address those in reverse order. First, if you take a look over here, and I thought we could graphically show this to you, and even though it's as kind of as big as we can get it on that screen. First, we're very grateful for the governor's inclusion of our bond package. $9 million set aside for our market. That'd be nice too, wouldn't it? But $9 million for our markets, and we've had a dramatic turnaround with respect to a net profit in our markets, net profit to the state as far as us managing the business, and we've talked about it on several occasions. I'm real proud of our staff and some of the things we've been able to do to bring efficiencies and again get that, as Director Ferris said, the bang for the buck for taxpayers of Georgia. But what we are still facing is an Atlanta State farmers market that was built in the late 50s, and it's in some cases we've been the duct tape and the bale and twine and all of that is we're to the end of being able to do that in order to plan for the next generation and have the technology necessary to within our structures. And yes, food safety technology, being able to have buildings that are easily Primus certified so they can meet the demands of the consuming public. And it's important that we invest in this facility. And so that's what we intend to do. If you'll look, this is the Atlanta market. And granted, Madam Chair, there will be some of the package will also be beneficial for some side projects in Moultrie, perhaps Valdosta in some little update things, but primarily this year's focus is on the Atlanta market. What you see here is 5.8 in new construction and renovations, and the reason that graph really covers over the wholesale side of the market is the wholesale side of the market is full. And that is the terminal market for the Southeast. I mean, the food we all consume on a daily basis and that are in Cheddar's and other places, even though it'll be in, wherever Representative Peake, your restaurant might be, and almost without respect to who your supplier is, it's a pretty good shot that it might have come through there first. And that's what we want to be geared for the next generation. About $1.4 million in site work. All that has to be done on the lower part of the market, the old retail part of the market, maybe the part of the market that most Georgians would remember going to. As I went down there with my granddaddy, and we used to have a watermelon festival. Well, that's where that still exists. But in order to do this, we're going to have to make some space. And so what our plan is if you see where the red X's are, will be to remove those sheds. That comes in that part of this site prep work. And then construct somewhere between 70 and 90,000 square foot new high bay 21st century produce house. We already have people competing for the space, so this is not a spec building. this is ready to go once it comes out of the ground. It's a very easy building to build too. It's a quick, should be a quick project, and even to the point that if we're successful with this package and the bonds get sold in August, I think we'll have a good report for you this time next year. These things move pretty quickly. So what you also see in the green X are those may be it's according to see how the funds go and what can be prepared for the next generation. But you'll see that's kind of the front face of the market. It faces Forest Parkway, and we do have some opportunity there. Don't know how far this is going to go, but I don't know if y'all know from our Georgia Grown program. Chef Linton Hopkins, one of the best foodie guys in Atlanta and perhaps all of America, he's preparing food now for Delta flights for quite a number of Delta international flights. Started first with first class, and then it's moved on to really full coach and everything. Linton Hopkins would like to come to the market. We'd love to see Georgia products prepared at the market and then put on Delta flights. And so we're even looking at the potential of some commercial food processing that would be engaged right there at the market too. I think it'd be fabulous. If you asked me to put a percentage point on that, I'd probably, I can't tell you if it's 50 or 50 or 60-40 or 10-90 right now. I do know it's at least 10 because we're talking about it, and getting somebody of that stature interested in the Atlanta market is a pretty good thing for all of us. There's the footprint of where that building would be, and you see those two squares up on the front that could potentially be transitioned into this processing and a little more of a nicer retail facility. Also in our bond request is for our vehicles. There's $500,000 there, $300,000 obviously for a new vehicle, and then the big ticket item that comes around every so often, y'all know, with our responsibility with weights and measures. On the weight side of the deal, when you get the big units, that are the big trucks, that are the big scale units, that's an expensive proposition. This would allow us for two of those in that $200,000 range. What we have been cannibalizing the third one till he's all gone, and so we've got to start with some new units, and I would appreciate y'all's consideration of that. Now, some questions have been made for purchases versus lease. We basically we found that we need to purchase trucks, but we ought to lease cars, and that's the most efficient plan for the state of Georgia and the taxpayers we all serve. So this goes into the truck fleet category. Our lease costs, so just some data there that you may be interested in. Our test units, certainly we have to purchase those and find some details there. Interesting note that our large scale test units are currently 25 years old. Technology really doesn't change too terribly. There's a little more computer to it now, but heavy trucks are heavy trucks, but we sure would appreciate y'all's help on this. Now, that was markets, and that goes to our, markets and our vehicles.
I got a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I was looking at this about your cars, and you said purchase option from Enterprise Rent-A-Car. Are those used cars you're buying?
Hang on just a moment.
I mean, I would think when you get
And
something.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, on the purchase lease?
Uh-huh.
No, ma'am, those would be lease.
And
That's the whole lease package. It's just leasing, and it's a walk-away lease, so there's no, we do have some issues if they're mileage, but we manage that. We manage the mileage to make sure there's not an overage, but it is something we can walk away from. Pretty handy arrangement.
okay. Well, how does Enterprise Rent-A-Car come into it?
Oh, okay. I'm trying to look at it on here. Yeah, that would be, we're working with DOAS on that.
Statewide contract.
Oh, statewide, okay. And so that's where we get the cars from statewide.
Yes. Good.
Okay, I just thought about, when you rent a car, it would be a used car,
Right. We, Madam Chair, if I could, I want to thank the committee and the governor and everyone for your help last year, because we too were the benefactors of, first in the governor's budget, and then a little bit in y'all's ability to enhance our request. We were in a similar situation and remain in a similar situation to our previous presenter. We had, this time last year, we had 62 employees of our 520 that were at salary levels below poverty. Your package last year was allowed us to get our professional, more those skill positions in plant and meat inspection and food safety, to get them from a basic round starting figure of 26,000 to get them up to 31,000. Then we took our fuel and measures folks who were just above $20,000 a year, and were able to elevate them to a starting salary of $28,000. That's real good. Plus, we were able to get those folks that were below $23,500 at least up to $23,500. And so we've made good progress on our first step. But just as we told you last year, and have visited with the governor on throughout the last three budget cycles, we know I think our package was in the 3.5, 3.6, 3.7 range, if I remember, trying to get us into the competitive world. And then last year, y'all were able to help us in the range of about $1.4 million. So it's already helped. We have had. I'm going to turn to one of my little cheat sheets here when it comes to where our employees have been and what our retention rate has been. From FY14 to the FY15 thus far, we've been able to reduce retention, and we had a turnover rate of 15 and some change in food safety. That's been reduced to a little over 7. We were in meat inspection 13% over. Prior year was 37%. So we made some progress, but this year we were at 3.2%. So point blank, and I can provide those to the committee members to see where we've done in our management. It's been real good. But what our request when it comes to salary enhancements this year, and we did request it, Madam Chair, was $715,000 to get our second phase. Because when we brought our starting folks up, we compressed the middle. I mean, that's pretty. We all could have predicted that. But we'd like to address about 170 some odd employees in that range, and that $715,000 would allow us to do that and keep our momentum. And so, Madam Chair, that's we're very appreciative of the support of this committee, and your kindness to us is recognized by our employees, and all of our employees. They're grateful and they're seeing progress, but certainly we wanted to bring this before you as our second phase, and if there's any way you could consider that, we'd be appreciative. I'd be happy to answer any question.
Representative Welch, did you have a question?
Yes, ma'am, I do. A few questions to the Commissioner, if I may, sir. There's I'm looking, I was just checking back across, and I see where soil and water conservation under section 13.6 is moving into your department. The amount allotted in both the governor's recommendation and then on our worksheet here for the House is 4.2, almost $4.3 million. The amount allotted or removed from that agency, or the collapse into that agency into Ag Department, is 4.47. So we're about $200,000 in difference between what's reported on one sheet versus your sheet. And I wanted to know what that difference was, what was being changed so as to make up that $200,000, $189,000 change.
Thank you, Representative Welch. Not I'll in being respectful to the entire process. I'm really it's an interesting thing, because besides your question and a brief discussion with Representative Knight, I've not had one conversation with OPB. I didn't know this was coming. And that's just the way that worked. So, quite frankly, we haven't gotten into the minutia of it because I don't know what the plan is. And I will. We were just talking about it a little bit yesterday, and that's not. I can tell you this: if it is the will of the governor and the will of the legislature that the business plan work this way, your Department of Agriculture will do so in an exceptional fashion. You have my commitment on that. But I will also say that we were talking. What's today's 14, and day 14 today. We're 26 days away, and one thing that's may be interesting, I'm not aware of a piece of legislation yet, of enabling legislation. And that whole body of law dealing with the Soil and Water Conservation Commission, that dates back to 1937. It is a very, very intricate piece of legislation. And so my guess would be that if, in all due respect, if we don't have a bill, we might have a real interest in supplemental budget next year because I don't think I have any authority to implement the budget. And that's a serious question that I have because the Department of Agriculture is not authorized to do that. The Soil and Water Conservation Commission is.
I have a little free time. I guess I'll get started on that then.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
So sorry to,
Okay.
in all respects, I don't know the difference in the numbers, and we've not had access to the books. And if that's something we're going to do, we will get on that as this progresses. Absolutely.
Representative Pegg.
But, yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Just piggyback on that. I mean, have you and Director Ferris had conversations about how to manage the? I mean, I'm assuming that soil and water would come under your jurisdiction or your responsibility under that. I mean,
Well,
Dykes.
I'm sorry. Sorry.
Representative, Brent Dykes and I go back a long way.
Yeah. Y'all will figure it out, huh?
That is
Yeah,
correct.
okay.
There's never been a problem with communication with us and the Soil and Water Conservation Commission.
Okay.
But
I figured you were on it, so yeah.
But at the same time, I do not know what the blueprint is from a standpoint of. But if it is the will of the legislature to advance this in this format, then that process will begin. Okay.
Representative Numbers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I apologize, Commissioner, and to the chairwoman for having to step out, so I may ask a question that you've already addressed, but you were, when I walked back in, you were touching on employee turnover, and you've seen a reduction in that turnover, and you attribute, I think, that to the funding to help with employee packages, salary. Mm-hmm. Is that accurate?
Unquestionable.
Let me ask you a question. A couple of questions, if I may, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
That, in your opinion, of running the Department of Agriculture and overseeing however many employees has helped morale. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes.
And when people are happy going to work, they turn out a better day's work, correct?
Yes.
They're safer, more efficient, more productive, all the things that you could think of, warm, happy, fuzzy people.
Certainly.
Okay.
We all would. That's the way we'd run our business.
Another question. What do you, and y'all may not have conducted a study, but I know Director Ferris with the Georgia Forestry Commission mentioned a independent study he had, and he has a dollar amount to get those employees to 85% parity. Do you have any study or knowing where you're at percentage-wise with your employees on their pay scale?
No, sir, not from a percentage-wise or the academic approach to that. I'm just looking at the basic economics. And it was our belief that when we put forth our plan last year, that we thought every starting salary, particularly in an inspector role, we thought for to be a professional for the state of Georgia, that starting salary should be $35,000 a year. And so our plan that we have submitted, and that this 715 would help us take the next step in phasing that in, would be to get our starting salaries up to $35,000.
Yes, sir.
And then with the enhancements to that, then push our more advanced folks up on the next level too, and
Sure.
those based on experience and tenure and job performance. But if you're a food safety person or a meat inspection person or somebody that's in a Home Depot checking the plant industry or inspecting pesticides, those are folks that we'd like to attract the best and the brightest We'd like to get some students out of ABAC and Fort Valley and some places that have ag backgrounds and enhance the performance of this department. And I believe to do that, you're going to have to pay them $35,000 a year to get some attention.
Okay.
So a little less academic than Director Ferris, but I think it's pretty close.
Sure. So, at the end of the day, same end result.
Yes.
You've got energetic, upbeat employees running the department.
We want the best trained, highest skilled, and I've said to y'all, it's not just talk. I believe this Georgia General Assembly wants to be the best General Assembly in America. And you can, I mean,
we are.
We all work to
We are.
Excellent.
Just have
Yeah, we think we are.
And if you let me finish, and I was going to say, I already believe that you are.
He is a politician.
But we want to be the best Department of Agriculture in America, and you
Yes,
can't do that if you don't have the best trained people. And they've got to be well equipped. They've got to be motivated, and they've got to know that somebody's got their back. And it's an inspiring job. These people do great, awesome work, and but we just unfortunately fell a generation behind, and it's a terribly difficult thing to catch up all at one time. Hence our phased-in approach.
Follow-up.
Okay.
Shifting away from employee salaries and everything, and again, forgive me if you mentioned this while I stepped out, but the Georgia Grown program,
Yes, sir.
it seems to be working. It seems to be building its own legs, own energy, running wide open, and I want to commend you for that program, and I want to commend your department for an effort they reached out to me on not too long ago, and we're trying to tie in more timber-related industries with Georgia Grown, because it seems like those trees grow in Georgia.
Thank you. I'm very grateful. I'm very proud of our team, and really to start from from zero 3 years ago, and now have almost 500 businesses, farms, folks that are licensed to use that logo, and it's probably showing up in every retail marketplace. One of the areas is timber. One of the areas, a lot of forest products. We've had some discussion and still need to continue those, and perhaps you and I can join in on that with our friends at Home Depot. I believe there's a great opportunity to have Georgia-produced products in Georgia Home Depots, and I think they'd be surprised at the premium that would bring, that how well our consumers would respond to that.
I wouldn't dare try to put myself in a marketing position, but I would love to see. I'm kind of fond of this little logo right here
Yes, sir.
on book. Now, I'm not licensed, so I admit illegally I used his logo on my book, but I would love to see a Georgia-grown emblem outside of every one of our Georgia forestry headquarters up and down the highway. I don't know if that's possible, how much it would cost, but I'd love to see some numbers on how much that would cost as we look at the Home Depot and the lumber selling places, where when I walk in, I can guarantee you Chad Nimmer and his family is going to buy Georgia Grown too before we buy anything else.
Yes, sir. One thing that I don't know, we'll get to it this year, it is on the drawing board for even an expanded view of that from a public perspective. It will be, I believe there's going to be an opportunity for a consumer membership to Georgia Grown. And so the Georgia consumers, then with that, wouldn't be that it would be at as what do they say at participating stations, at participating members, where a consumer could actually have a discount at certain members at farmers markets and different things. I think that's a totally untapped market as well. We got to get any more people in front of them.
Do I have any other questions for the commissioner?
I actually have one more, and I'll quit. This will be the last one.
Okay.
Is it true that olive trees made it before pine trees in the Georgia Grown logo?
Well, there's a very
You don't have to answer that.
There's a very influential member of your committee who's been a strong, avid Georgia Grown supporter since day one. And
did you just call him a better legislator and marketer? Yes.
Well,
yes, I can take it.
Yes, sir. Madam Chair, I yield well.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Now we will have some people from the Veterinary Medicine Diagnostic Lab to say a few words for us, and we appreciate y'all coming. And if you would introduce yourself, Kate.
Hi, I'm Dr. Keith Harris from the College of Veterinary Medicine. I'm the chair of the Department of Pathology and have responsibility for the two diagnostic labs in the state. This is Sean Rogers, and he's the chief financial officer for the College of Veterinary Medicine. And first of all, I appreciate you adding us to the list. Obviously, you have a full schedule. It's very humbling listening to the previous speakers. Obviously, you guys have a lot of major decisions to make on where to spread the limited resources the state has. Just briefly, the veterinary diagnostic system in Georgia has two labs. You probably know that. There's one in Athens, primarily covers North Georgia, and there's one in Tifton that covers most of South Georgia. There's overlap, but in general, they are pretty close to geographic regions, and why it's important to have two diagnostic labs. The mission's twofold. One is to support veterinarians, companion animal owners, producers in making diagnoses. And the other one, which probably is actually more important, and it's more of an insurance policy, is disease surveillance. That is making a diagnosis of a disease. The earlier you make that diagnosis, the better the chance you have of containing it. Particularly important with diseases that are not prevalent or don't exist in the state of Georgia. As the chair well knows, the diagnostic labs, like a lot of agencies, have been struggling with budget problems the last few years. Like everyone else, we've had cuts almost every year since 2008. And probably the one thing that may be a little more unique to us is that we're dependent on biomedical type equipment and supplies, which the inflation rate is significantly higher than the general inflation rate. So it's kind of a double whammy. So we've survived by consolidating some of our laboratories within the labs, by cutting personnel and cutting some of the research component of the lab, and increasing our fee-for-service. And can't increase our fee-for-service anymore. Just to put that to rest, we're already the highest in the southeast and the other states. You also have to realize that for our surveillance mission to be successful, we need to do diagnostic tests. We need to do necropsies or production animals such as cattle, hogs, and goat, sheep. So we've pretty well maxed out with that. And then I guess the other thing too I want to point out is our equipment. As again discussed before the chair, since I've been here 7 years, I don't think I can count on one hand the equipment over $5,000-$10,000 I've approved in that period of time. And in our business, equipment, the diagnostic equipment uses is very expensive. When I say expensive, anywhere $100,000 to $200,000 for a unit. It's cutting edge. So at this point, we are better off than we were last year. We've seen some little turn in the economy, which means more tests. We got an injection through the equipment bond that I think largely originated here, $1.38 million equipment bond that was put in the budget for 2015. And that was a huge, again, a huge shot in the arm. We did get a slight increase in the governor's budget, I think around $86,000 to cover benefits and a slight salary increase. And what we're asking for y'all is another equipment bond, $1.5 million, and a raise in the state contract. So our state contract is to pass through the Department of Agriculture, and we're asking for an increase of $200,000. This is to pay for supplies and to maintain our people.
Well, this increase in the state contract, will that put you back where you were before the cuts started coming?
No, ma'am. We'll still be well below that, but we'll be in, I think, a tenable position, particularly with the equipment bond. The value of the equipment bond, it takes the pressure off our operating budget. So we believe that if we get that one-time increase, we get that increase, and then over time with basically very slight increases to keep up with inflation, will be good. Now, we're not completely dependent on on this. I mean, meanwhile, we're trying to increase our number of tests we do, trying to be more efficient, and we're hoping between the two that within the next year or two that would basically be solvent.
Just to kind of give the committee, if I can, Madam Chairman, just a picture of the contract is about, with Department of Agriculture, is about 45% of our budget. Fee income that we're generating through our own tests is about 40%, and then the remainder is a mix of other kinds of support, including federal grants. So the contract is a very critical piece of our business. So
Any other questions? Thank you, and thank you.
Okay, thank you for
Thank you
having
so
us.
much for working with us.
Thank you.
And is Dale Green here? Would you like to say a few words before I think now Representative Dudgeon's back, and so we can go on with after this for the public service.
I'm going to have to go to meeting with speaker.
So thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Dale Green. I'm the interim dean of the Warnell School of Forestry and Natural Resources at the University of Georgia. I have an ask to put in front of you that would help us partner with some state agencies in the state on issues of importance to forest landowners, private forest landowners. We've already heard some discussion of the importance of forestry in our state. It's 2/3 of our landscape, which is among the highest in the country. We have the largest forest products-based industry in the country. 91% of these forest lands in Georgia are privately owned, and most of them by 260,000 citizen landowners in the state. They own somewhere close to 70% of the forest land in the state. And so these needs particularly help those landowners, but also our suburban folks that are in this wildland urban interface where we have our forest interacting with where we live and work. Forestry outreach in the School of Forestry and Natural Resources is sort of the counterpart to the Cooperative Extension Service and the College of Agriculture. In fact, we used to have our folks run through that, but that was pulled out as a separate counterpart organization a few years ago. And our state specialists in our organization, and there's one in Statesboro and one in Tifton and three in Athens, support the county agents in the state, across the state, that work with landowners and homeowners and people like that are dealing with these issues. And we also increasingly are backstopping the Georgia Forestry Commission. You've heard of the cuts they've taken. So our technical expertise in Athens, we've always worked closely with them, but even more so in the last few years as tight budgets have challenged all of us to continue to meet the needs of our citizens. So we have three positions to ask you to consider. These address current needs that are high priorities for forest landowners in the state, and this was expressed to us through our interactions with the Commission and also with the Georgia Forestry Association here in the state. One is a position in the area of economics and taxation. With 91% of these forest lands privately owned, forest landowners are very sensitive to economic conditions and making decisions about how they manage their land. So the effect of timber prices, taxes, interest rates, all of that is of importance to them. And there are additional new markets coming on. We have a large wood pellet industry that has strengthened our pulpwood markets. We have the potential in the future, perhaps, of there being market-based payments for carbon sequestration. And there are other non-timber income sources. Pine straw, for example, is a good one. So this position has long been vacant. It was one of the first ones we lost early in the recession years, and it's our highest priority. The second one is forest health. This is where we interact very closely with Bob Ferris and his great people in the Forestry Commission. Forest health is a growing problem across the East. This is exacerbated by global trade. A lot of that global trade comes in the Port of Savannah with materials coming from around the world. We have federal and state people trying to stop that as it comes in, but some of it gets in nonetheless. So we have several invasive insects, plants, and animals that are affecting our forest. We have a forest pathologist in Athens in a research and teaching position, but no one in an outreach position. She gives generously of her time in this capacity, but to really provide the service we need somebody on the outreach side in there. And then the third one would be wildlife. Wildlife is a big source of income to forest landowners, but they can also be a curse if we're talking about feral swine. Homeowners, we're talking about feral cats. These creatures carry diseases. They're a threat to agriculture and companion animals and people in the state. So there's a need there. So our request is only to cover salary and benefits for the people. We can provide the operating expenses for these folks by some redirects in our budgets and through federal and extramural grants that we would pursue.
Now, I sort of have a question on this.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you are with the university?
Yes, ma'am.
You're funded through Regents. So you're wanting us to fund some people in forestry?
We'd like to put this in front of you because it ties closely with the commission. This is not a part of the budget we sent forward to the governor, but we will bring it to their committee as well. But we wanted to make you aware of how this ties closely to the commission.
All right. You mentioned something about carbon exchanges?
Yes, ma'am.
Carbon credits,
Right.
I guess you got. How much income does the Georgians receive on carbon credits?
Today, with the markets where they are, essentially very little to none, because most of those markets are policy-based markets, and we don't have federal policies mandating carbon reductions at this point in time. They have attempted those markets in Europe. They've struggled, but in the future, that is likely to become a market.
So it's just you can't sell carbon credit. I mean, it's just something we're just
Very
talking
difficult today for an average small Georgia landowner.
What about, does the Georgia Forestry Commission sell any carbon credits?
I think Bob would be better to answer that question. I know they did some work a few years ago at developing the underpinnings for one, but he can update you on the current status of that.
We work with the Warnell School to develop a carbon registry that this legislature set up. It's not market-based, but there are folks that are utilizing that registry. Really good example, Fort Benning just enrolled all of their forested acres on that registry to help them accomplish the no net emissions that the military is following. But it's not market-based.
Right.
And there are a few landowners in the state back 4 years ago that were able to sell a few carbon credits.
Right.
Okay.
But not currently.
Not currently.
Movement here.
Those exchanges have struggled.
Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate you
All right.
coming.
Thank you
Thanks,
for your
Ian.
time.
Thank
you
you. PSC. Commissioner Eaton, thank you for coming, and
thank you for having me, Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee. I'm joined by my colleague, Commissioner Bubba McDonald, and a few of our Public Service Commission staff members are here as well. The Georgia Public Service Commission is a vital contributor to economic growth and development in Georgia. Major manufacturers who have relocated to Georgia have cited the state's reliable and affordable energy costs as a key reason for moving here. The Commission also ensures the safety and protection of the state's underground utility infrastructure, natural gas systems, as well as keeping our telecommunications network viable. In the 2016 budget, the governor's budget contains no additional funding for the Public Service Commission, and we are requesting from this committee that 3 authorized positions be filled, and we're also requesting additional money to refresh the commission's information technology infrastructure. So specifically, of those 4 items, specifically in the 2016, one of them, and I want to thank this committee for including this position in the 2015 amended budget. We obviously would like to see a continuation of that in the 2016 budget, is to fill a position of a utility analyst for Plant Vogtle. Plant Vogtle being arguably the largest construction project in the country right now, vital to its 60-year amortization period. It's vital to the future of Georgia. I'm sure a lot of you have heard in the paper and whatnot that the commission has not approved any overruns yet, but there will be a day that we are presented due to the delay in the project with overruns, and we're going to need to make sure that we have enough staff members trained and are ready to analyze what we're presented with and be able to present their case to the commission. The second position that we are requesting is a utility analyst for environmental regulation and renewable energy. Currently, that department is very overworked as renewable energy becomes something that continues to grow in the state of Georgia. You know, at the commission, we've approved a number of major solar projects. Commissioner McDonald and the audience here spearheaded a number of them. I know there's legislation over in the House now talking about that will help encourage solar, rooftop solar. And so there's just a lot that's on our plate when it comes to dealing with renewable energy. On top of that, the commission is having, and this is a huge issue, but we're having to deal with the implementation of the new EPA carbon rule that's come out, and the unilateral decision by the EPA. While all the commissioners have spoken out unanimously against it, we still have to put a game plan together on how to implement it, and we've worked with our colleagues over the Environmental Protection Division, EMCs, municipalities, wholesalers. We're trying to come up with a plan to make this work, but unfortunately, while the national reduction is 30%, the EPA has put a completely inequitable reduction on Georgia of 47%. And so we're having to do quite a bit more than some of the other states, and we're being punished for our diversity. We also, along the lines of renewable energy, there's a lot of good things going on here. The commission has been extremely innovative when it comes to working with our military bases here in Georgia. And as some of you may be aware, they have renewable mandates. The gentleman before had talked about Fort Benning with the carbon and meeting those mandates. Well, Georgia is, we've become actually the model. Generals out of the Pentagon have mentioned that Georgia has become the model now for the entire country, and we have helped implement through innovation with Fort Benning, Gordon, Stewart, and now Kings Bay, a solar program that puts no upward pressure on rates and works with these bases, and it's going to allow them to meet these mandates and be more competitive. Hopefully, even when they're doing BRAC analysis and whatnot, it's going to be one more thing that gives them, and it's not just from a renewable standpoint, it also gives them a strategic independence in matter of a national emergency. So these are great things that are happening on the renewable front. The third position that we're requesting is a vacant position for an applications developer to work on application development and some cybersecurity issues. You know, and along with that, we're also kind of coupled with that asking for $277,000 to update that infrastructure. The spending in just on IT expenditures, when you look at from 2004 to 2008 at the commission, was $145,000 per year. From 2009 to 14, it's dropped to $36,000. Now, we all know we were in a very difficult budget position in the last few years, and I'm certainly not the one that has to balance the checkbook, but you can only delay these upgrades for so long until you kind of have to pay the Pied Piper. And these applications are vitally needed at the commission. For instance, the three main areas is we have a fax and filing case track system. The Public Service Commission is partially a judicial body, so all of our dockets are tracked online. Attorneys, members of the media, consumers, all different groups track these documents, and our head of IT mentioned that aspect gets 1.4 million hits annually. In addition to that, we have a consumer response system where we, and again, these are not off-the-shelf applications. They are developed, customized for the PSC, the customer response system. And we have a GovBud database, and that is the lifeblood of that department. That's our pipeline inspection department, and that's how they track all of the violations, and I'll get to it in a little bit. but there are substantial contributions made to the state treasury as a result of our pipeline safety department. So as I talked about earlier, and I know there's a few new members, and I'll be happy to answer questions at any moment, but our main role is regulating the state's shareholder-owned utilities, and then we also ensure pipeline safety and still do a little bit of work on the telecom front. Since 2002, the Commission has sent over $48 million to the Treasury. In 2014, the Commission sent $800,000 to the State Treasury through fines and regulatory assessment fees and whatnot. So we do contribute back. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that at the Commission as well, we have had trouble as the economy has picked up, staying competitive with the outside world, especially in pipeline safety. We've lost 9 out of our 15 pipeline safety inspectors over the last 4 years. Apparently, we're very good at training them, but not so good at keeping them. But so I would be remiss if I didn't mention that. And they're not leaving for 6 or 7% raises; they're leaving for 40 and 50% raises. And so it's difficult to be competitive with that. But with that, I'm here to answer any questions.
Do I have any questions? Representative Dudgeon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize for being late. I was upstairs
we were waiting on you.
with the governor's reveal on the big constitutional amendment we've been talking about here. I had the privilege yesterday of going through the PFC IT needs directly with the staff and looking over the thing. And as someone in that business for the past 25 years, I can attest that the needs are real, that they're operating with equipment that is barely functioning for what they're trying to do. And I think was Chuck said that they have a legal responsibility, some of that they have to deliver, and they do customer complaints and things like that. They got a lot of needs. I will say to you guys, since you're here, because you weren't here yesterday, I believe this need now is real and it needs to be met if we can. But over the long term, I would encourage you to look in your IT guys to move to more using data centers off-site. More and more people in the private sector are just not in the business of having a data center. They're just moving towards using vendors who are really, really good at that. And they stay in the business that you do your software and you deal with your data, but they deal with all the hardware and all those problems. So over the long term, I would encourage y'all to do that. But that doesn't help you today. Today, y'all really need this infrastructure.
Representative, we appreciate you coming by, and our executive director relayed your comments about using more cloud database work. Our biggest concern along those lines, and I'm sure there's a way to accomplish that from a secure standpoint, but a lot of the databases contain trade secret data, and we just there's just a concern on that front, but it probably is an area we need to be moving in.
Yeah, there's more and more ways to do that, and there are people putting very secret data out there on other providers, but we can talk about that offline.
And we'd be happy to do that. Okay. Thank you. Thanks again for coming by.
Thank you, and we're so fortunate to have him on our appropriations since he is an expert. Thank you, and thank you so much for working with him. And
thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman.
Any questions? Any other questions? Well, I think that's...
Again, thank you for your 2015 help, and we appreciate your support.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.